And you can take it away, Mark.
Okie dokie. So, welcome to an introduction to issue forks and merge requests. The scope of this is definitely going to be about how to add stuff through Composer to your Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 sites, mostly Drupal 9 in these examples. Um, Whoops, wrong button there. There you go. I am Mark Casias. I am a Drupal Tech Lead for Kanopi Studios. Been working there for about 6 months or just over 6 months now, which has been spectacular. I've been doing Drupal since about 2005. I'm the main maintainer for the Smart Trim module, and I do enjoy giving talks and presentations. And I grew up in the Bay in San Francisco. I just found out that they're renaming my high school, and I'm a little bit bitter about that. But that was also a long time ago, so why would I care? Um, Speaking of Kanopi, Kanopi is a great place to work. I've enjoyed it very, very much since I started working here, and we are hiring Drupal Tech Leads if you're in want to be in a more um, advanced role, and that's actually what my title is. Or if you want to develop your skills a little bit more, we're looking for developers. We're also looking for producers, project managers, very actively. So please feel free to join me and work with me. It'll be a lot of fun. And as you can see, Tommy jumps. Tommy's the guy in the tan pants, and he jumps really high. That's all I take away from this photo. Um, I'm also one of the co-organizers of Decouple Days. Decouple Days is a oh, speaker notes. Those would be nice. There we go. Decouple Days is a software conference for architects, developers, and business people involved in decoupling headless or service-oriented architectures using content management systems and something else. If you ever use Gatsby or React, using Drupal as your backend, using anything as your content management, but then having a presentation layer is really good. Come to the couple days. We're also actively looking for sponsors. We are doing this virtually again this year. We normally do it in New York, but thank you, COVID. We're going to be doing it virtually again for 2021. Hopefully, after 2021, we can all get our act together and be able to hang out together. So, quick warning: how a normal person gives a talk. They start the talk and then talk about what they're going to talk about, and then that's it. But me, it definitely goes off the rails occasionally. So please excuse me and be patient. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them. I do not mind interruptions at all, and actually welcome questions during the talk, and corrections during the talk is usually what I like to say as well. Because if I'm off, I would like to know right away, not be worried about that. Um, then speaking of which, I'm on the board for graymuzzle.org. Graymuzzle.org is a nonprofit that raises money and then gives that money to shelters to help older dogs get adopted out of the shelter so that they're not in the shelter at their end of life. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm in the process of updating the website, graymuzzle.org, from Drupal 7, which is what it's in now, to Drupal 9 using a Tailwind based theme. If you feel like helping out, please let me know. That would be great. If I've got the data, the migration part done, but I'm not much of a front end developer, so I kind of stagnate on that. But if you want to help, I would appreciate the assistance. And hit me up on Slack. I am Marky on Slack, or Drupal Slack if you want. Also, speaking of dogs, there's my dog Drew. She likes posing for photos all the time, so I use her in my presentations as much as possible. So anyway, what are we going to do today? We're going to talk about what we're going to talk about. Brief history of using Composer. A briefer history of the patch workflow. Something that you can read the table of contents. I don't need to read it for you. So we'll go on. So what are we here for? The goals of this talk is to be able to work with the new GitLab fork system that was just introduced to Drupal.org last fall, actually last spring, but it actually became commonplace in the fall around November. Smart Trim was a beta, definitely tried using it when it first came out, but now pretty much all projects have the ability to use the GitLab system instead of the patch system, which is a little bit more robust. Speaking of doing that, you can. We're going to show how to create the forks in the UI. This is going to be a little handsy-on-y. The great thing about virtual talks is that you're never worried about network issues, because if there was a network issue, y'all wouldn't be seeing or hearing me now. So assuming no one says anything, that I'm going to take it that we're not having network issues. We're actually being able to see everything. But anyway, I can do a live demo without too much of a problem. The other thing I'm going to do is show how to use those merge requests in a Composer instance using patches, just like you would use patches in Composer normally. And I got to admit, the only reason I picked this slide out of the templates that we have is the face that my boss Matt is making in this, because it's hilarious to me. So anyway, if they didn't want me to use it, they wouldn't have picked it or put it in the demo, I would think. So let's talk about the first part, using Composer. And basically, nowadays you want to use Composer to create a Drupal instance. This slide actually has the Composer create project line command. And what it does is it basically downloads 3 libraries into your folder. The core recommended, Composer scaffold, and Composer installers. There's a 4th one called project message, but I remove that almost instantly every time I do a setup because I don't like it. But these are the defaults of your Composer instance once you get started. And you'll notice that it has the... oh, why did it do that? Ooh, sorry. I'm learning how to use my thing, and it killed my presenter notes. So much for being okay with live demos, huh? Right? Anyway. So there. See if this works. Do you all see it highlighted? Just someone yay or nay, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Because I got this pointy thing and I like using it even though it's at my house and I'm not even close to it. Anyway, it names the project Drupal recommended projects. I always recommend changing that, the description of it, because this stuff is all going to get committed to your repo. So you want to change this information all the time. Maybe add the actual homepage that you're using. There are other things like who's the developers on there. This is great information that you can use on there. The reason that we like using Composer for Drupal installs, a lot of people are probably familiar with this, but it helps configure the dependencies of Drupal. You don't have to worry about what packages you need to download. The Composer, the Drupal core recommended project locks the project to specific dependency versions that have been tried and true tested over and over again. So you don't have to worry about things that are creeping up on you. All of a sudden you're downloading the wrong library or the wrong version of the library. Using Composer takes care of that stuff for you. By default, Drupal 9 is installed. So if you want to use Drupal 8, you just want to point out that, download create project using the 8.x instant or 8.4 instance or 8.8, whatever we're on. 8.9, I knew what instance we're on. And then you're able to fire up a Drupal site real easy. I actually want to use in the Smart Trim module, because I have a separate library in the Smart Trim module to actually do some of the parsing for me. I actually want to add that as a dependency because I'm sure someone would like to work on that a little bit better, and the things that I have in there are a little more custom than they should be. So another great thing that I do with my Drupal instance is I will... There you are, visual code. I will also use Doxel real quickly because it takes one command to install Doxel. The one thing I do want to point out, if you're using Doxel for Drupal 9, is that you want to add the DB image of 5.7-1.4. That's the latest version of MySQL. That's a requirement of Drupal 9. So there you go. And then just based on that, in a very quick minute, I actually created a Drupal 9 site here, which of course has nothing on it, but I was going to use it as a demo. Oh shoot, you know what? Live demos don't work very well if you don't have your instance working because you're working on other things. See, it says loading project. Anyway, so we'll move on while that's loading and whatnot. To add modules is very simple. I created this GIF and it loops over and over again, so I'm sorry that it loops over and over again, but it's very simple doing a composer require of the Drupal Smart Trim module, and it adds it on there, and you can't get it to pause. I really wish it would pause because then you can see, and actually I guess I can show you the composer JSON, is that it just adds it in there in your required statements very easily in the composer file. And that's pretty much how you manage it. Things that you want to, another point to the Smart Trim module needing a dependency, other modules have sub-dependencies like, the address module actually has a library that it downloads for you and puts it in the vendor director for you, so you don't have to worry about that. Or commerce will actually grab the address module for you. If you ever have installed the Acquia Lightning module, that installs a bunch of other sub-modules as well. And that's all taken care of with one line instead of having to go in and saying, oh, shoot, I forgot to get token, or I forgot this or that or the other, which makes your life a lot easier. So really, I want to kind of drive home that you want to use Composer for your installs and your Drupal site management. And again, normally there's a thing called core project message that I remove because I really don't see the point of it, but they like it and they keep it in core, so kudos to them. You can also add a library called CWeigans, and I could be mispronouncing that, but composer patches. And what you use that is, this is how you actually modify the patches or add patches to your composer instance. That's not something that comes out of the box with the create project. You actually have to add that as well. So you want to use the composer require CWeigans composer patches to allow for patches to be included. And then you add it to your Drupal file or your composer file with the exact verbiage there. You add a section called patches, and then what the vendor is, in our case Drupal, and then the library in the instance that's coming up is going to be called Smart Trim. A quick description of the what the issue is, and then the URL of said patch. And I quickly threw one in here as the instance as well. But of course, this will not build or do anything useful because there's not really much to that. There's also the ability in the patches section to do a patches file and then define a patch file inside your document here. But really, I personally like using everything in the composer file because that way it's all in one place and you're not searching for it everywhere. But it's up to you. That you are in charge of your life. So, all right. So first, we're going to talk about creating patches, which I like calling old and busted because that's how we've done Drupal for who knows how long. I mean, sure, it certainly has been ever since they moved to a Git-based library. I remember when I first started in Drupal, they were actually using CSV or CVS or whatever it's called that doesn't exist anymore, and it was horrible. And I'm glad that they moved to Git because Git's really easy. And now I'm going to actually show you a quick patch demo based on the Smart Trim module that, or an issue that was created for Smart Trim. And this was a really nice thing that they needed to be added. It's actually a branch off of a separate issue, but he does a really good job here. The person, just Caldwell, does a real good job of. This is a really great issue, and I'm very stoked by it. There's a problem motivation, proposed resolution. He adds an image of what he wants added in there, and then he also supplied a patch. And we can actually see that patch here and take a look. And this is what all the different things that he shows or that he's in there. And we can add that patch to our Smart Trim module. Just to give you a hint as to what's going on with that, if we actually go to look at the Smart Trim UI, and I'm going to go to the article and I'm going to manage the display of the teaser. And what I'm doing here is I want this to be smart trimmed. And normally the UI has this, the trim length, how many characters, use summary or present. This is all the stuff that's normally there. You notice that that's not what he has in his little image there because we're trying to add this more link ARIA label to it for screen readers, which is again really nice. So that's what that looks like in that case. But what we want to do here is we're going to actually add the patch in Composer. He's created the patch. I can go ahead and grab the link address. Oops, not save link as. One day I'll learn how to click things. I can copy the link address, and then I go back into my patch here, and here I'm going to go Drupal Smart Trim. The path or URL of said patch is here, which we already put in there. For a description, usually what I like doing is adding just the title here, because you can be as verbose as you want. There's not really a limit. And another thing that I like doing is using a quick link link generator. There's actually a link generator if you do https://dgo.to and then the issue number. This creates a link to that issue directly in your patch so you can actually see what the update of that is. And then you can add as many patches as you want. Once you do that, you do a Composer update Drupal/smart trim. Takes a second. We're using Composer 2 here, so it's pretty quick. He says, hoping that it's pretty quick. It's not being very quick for you. While we're waiting for that to happen, because it's not happening. Oh, there you go. See, and as you can see, it actually removes Smart Trim, deletes it from your code base because it was there before, installs the patch, or reinstalls it, then applies the patch for you. You do a quick drush, and actually since I'm using Doxel, I do a fin drush CR. I have actually a shortcut, so if I type this every once in a while, I have a shortcut on my computer, an alias of FD equals FinDrush. So if I type that, that's what that means. And now we can go back here to our page, refresh it, then take a look at this, and you'll notice display more link. There's the ARIA label, and it actually has a nice starting in there. Read more about node title. It supports tokens, which actually, now that I think about that, that means I should probably make tokens a requirement, or a requirement to the Smart Trim module. So anyway, so there's the difference in the with the patch. And let's see, was there anything else I want to talk about? Yeah, no, that was actually it. That's how you install a patch using Composer there. All right. Before I talk about the Git, I do want to mention that I've talked about using Git flow in a couple of talks. I talked about it in Phoenix a while back ago. I talked about it in Florida camp a while back ago. If you claim that you saw that either of these talks, I'm going to call you out on that, because maybe there were 3 people in the crowd for both of those talks. But main of the reason is probably because of the images that I create for this. And this is talking about Git flow and trying to use a hotfix to release things. And you just couldn't do it. Well, you couldn't do it off that picture because that picture's horrible. And then there's a more professional system. But basically, you couldn't hotfix or do anything other than the way the build system uses it now. It was pretty much linear the way that Git worked, with the current build system, because there was real no way to get around other issues. And then thankfully, like I said, last year we moved to Drupal.org, moved to GitLab. Which is really great. It's makes it easier to test. There's the issue page, and then you can create a workspace, and then do a merge and a pull request. Now, you still can't hotfix modules, meaning, and what I'm talking about when I'm talking about hotfixing modules is if you have a bunch of stuff in a dev branch, but you really need to fix a security flaw without releasing the stuff for the dev branch, it's not quite ready for prime time, you can't do that. But really, you should be working on managing your commits a little bit better anyway. So some of the benefits of the GitLab, or some of the conventions of GitLab, is the issue page itself will remain the single thread for conversation. There's no issues inside the GitLab interface. You want to use all your discussions inside. Every issue then has its own issue fork, which means that it is a separate instance of that project, and then you can add multiple branches as you need to, and then you can collaborate a little bit better. You can actually modify the code inside the editor online, or you can work on it locally depending on what you want to do. And then, of course, you can still upload patches to that, and that's actually what we're going to be doing next, is making a merge request out of patches, because we have this issue already that has a patch for us, and that's great. And what we want to do is actually go ahead and this is how we're going to create an issue fork. Pretty much anybody, if you're signed in, down here you're going to be able to create an issue fork, and it gives you also the option to branch off of 1.x. I personally don't do that because in my workflow I won't create, or I will create my own branch for it. But basically what it does is it will copy the Drupal or the 1.x branch, the 8.x-1.x. I'm not even used to saying that anymore, for you. So you just click on the create issue fork, and then it gives you an error. Awesome. Look at that. Remember how I said demos can't go wrong? I guess I was wrong. Ha! There we go. So now it actually did create it. It just gave a bad response. So you can now click to that issue fork, and then you can see it's just like the regular project with the 1.x branch and everything like that. You can then go ahead and clone it. And then what I have here is a in my terminal, you get clone smart trim and then the issue number, and that's great. Once I'm there, I can go ahead and cd into smart trim. That's the same one, yes. You'll notice that in my terminal I have the branch that highlighting. Since we want to have a different branch, we're going to want to go ahead and create a branch. So we're going to go ahead and get checkout-b, then the short name of what this issue is. You definitely want it to have a short issue, so let's call it ARIA label. All right, get checkout. All right, so now we're on the branch of ARIA label. Then actually you can actually apply the patch here. So if you take a look at this, I use a GUI editor called Tower. So we can actually get Tower this. Go into here and show that it has the main branch, which has all my commits, and then we have the ARIA label branch, and everything's happy. So now we want to go ahead and add the patch, and I'm going to cheat and copy and highlight and paste. You're going to want to curl that patch. This is how I normally add patches locally, is you have the curl, the URL of the patch, and then you pipe it in to patch using P1. that pulls down the patch and patches the file. And then if you take a look at your working copy here, why is there more than one thing? Anyway, this is the thing that is actually changing that we want to change. Oh no, it actually does change a couple things. Look at that. Adds token. Oh, it does throw a dependency of token, but that's not something different. But then it does all the different information, and if you do a git diff on your editor or in your line command, you'll actually see that this git diff is eerily similar to said patch. So the two are all together, which is great. And then we want to commit, and I always want to say that make sure that you commit giving the credit as possible. And in Drupal, you know, if you're a maintainer, you get this nice git command, git commit, issue, all that information. This gives Just Codwell the proper credit in the Drupal.org. So you just copy that, paste, and you actually want to, something that I always forget to do, and it takes me forever to scroll back because there's all this this content, but you actually want to add -a, which adds everything, and then adds the message of this, and then inserts the author as well. There you go. And then you can actually git push origin. Oh, heck. I always use this anyway, so I actually push it up, publish branch. That pushes this information up. You'll notice that it adds that to the org. And actually, if we go here to our happy issue fork, now we have another branch in here called aria label. All right. So out of this, now that we have this aria label that's pushed on there, we would want to create a merge request. Look, a big shiny button that says create merge request. It's as simple as that. You definitely want to do a good description of what's going on. You want to talk about what we're trying to do. So, and you can use Markdown as well. So, adding aria label to interface and display testing. You can mark down testing. Since it's a demo, I don't really feel like doing that. Actually, I have I use Alfred, so I have a autocomplete which basically does all this. Does who to be testing. This is pretty much, if you work with me, you're gonna get a lot of this because it's auto-completed for me. But I'm not gonna do that here. I'm gonna assign it to somebody. I'm gonna assign it to myself. You can add reviewers if you want. If you want the maintainer to review your things, everything is there. Then now you'll see the commit that's there. Submit change request. And there you go. Now we have a happy merge request going on there. And you can actually see if we refresh the page. It actually talks about the issue for that I created a merge request, issue for, and everything that's there. Nice in there. And then as we need to comment on that, we can actually make comments and everything that's want. It also up here at the top shows what merge requests are out there. And then we can go from there, which is the next slide, I believe. Yes, adding merge requests to Composer. Basically, what this is, once this is done, we no longer have, or there's a chance that we'll not have a patch to add. But also, and this is actually the point of this talk, is how to add, or when I came up with the idea of this talk, this is actually what I wanted to do. You can't really add this URL because it doesn't really do anything, because you're going to get this full page of everything that's going on. But you'll notice that here in the link, it says, okay, here are your changes. And then they got this nice thing called plain diff. And if you click that link, that actually does, hey, that looks exactly like the patch that we had before. Instead of a .patch, you get a .diff, or you use .diff here. If you do .patch, actually, a great thing about GitHub, or excuse me, GitLab and GitHub, this is a feature in GitHub too. If you create a merge request, and there it is, the merge request that in all its glory. But if you add .patch to the end of that URL, you get an emailed version of the patch, which isn't really consumable by the machines itself. However, or it's not what a patch file is, a diff, but this actually does a patch file with the emails onto it. So if you add .diff to the end of that, now we have the actual patch that we want. So then we can highlight this URL, and then instead of, well, let's actually do this demo as well. Let's go ahead and remove this smart trim patch completely. And then we're going to go ahead and composer update smart trim. Oh, no. Yeah, composer. Oh, well, actually, let's do this. Composer acquire Drupal / smart trim. And what this does is this actually makes sure to pull down the clean version without a patch, which is great. And now we want to go ahead and add the patch back, and we do that. I'm just going to cheat and do that. But we can actually take this URL, and instead of this big long patch URL, we're going to go ahead and add the merge request. Then composer update. It once again removes smart trim and installs the patch, and everybody's happy, because then once again we refresh this page and we have the ARIA label yet again. So this is actually can be tested and be considered complete. And I'm probably going to commit this shortly afterwards as well. So that is how to add merge requests in Composer. Basically, the short story, very, very long, is you take the merge request and add the .diff to it, and then you're going to get a something that you can put into Composer. Oh yeah, actually that was the demo. That was the demo slide that you all came to see, is pointing out the plain diff and then making sure how to add it to Composer. And once again, add .diff, not .patch. Make sure that you use .diff, and then add it into the patches section of your Composer file. There you go. So there. What's next? Oh, but wait, there's more.
I have a question before you move on.
Sure.
Okay, so I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but for those of us that don't install our instances locally when we review on Drupal.org, like say we use the Dreditor extension and we have that Simply Test Me button, or we use Simply Test Me in general. So in theory, we just use that diff file that's created in the merge request and populate that for the patch URL in Simply Test Me.
Exactly. That's
Okay,
exactly how you would do that. Is
great.
you would use that because really that's all the difference is what we're, instead of uploading a file, we're creating a GitHub repository for the issue. And so in using that, and I apologize because I have not used that in a long time, but you can you would want to use that for Simply Test Me as well. And one thing also, since we're here, I've noticed it, there's the Web IDE button, which allows you to actually make changes to the files as well if you want to update the repository or update the code base as well to help improve the merge request. Usually, one thing I would want to say is if you are trying to update this patch, this merge request should be consistent. So if you want to change the way that the merge works, I would recommend that we create a new branch off of the patched version and then update that and then create a new merge request so that you would have merge request 9 and so on and so forth. So.
But okay, let me tag on to that. Another question. So if you are working in the issue queue and you're not creating a patch, but you're creating a merge request first instead of a patch first, if you're doing collaboration, you would just add on to that first merge request, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Well, that's the beauty of it. Now you can add, like I could make changes to this merge request and make it final, but if I wanted to go a different direction, then you would want a different merge request. Cool. Yeah, but yeah, that basically that diff URL is the one that you're going to want instead of a patch URL. Again, I want to reiterate, don't use the patch URL because that won't work. I forget why I added this slide, to be honest with you. I think that the point of this slide, looking at my speaker notes, was to point out the difference between the patch, .patch, and .gif, or diff. I don't know why I said .gif. So patch link, merge request created in comments. Yeah, that's pretty much the end of that. There's another thing. Another thing that you can do is what I like calling Scorched Earth. And the reason behind this, and this is actually using the fork as the source for Drupal. And the reason that we're doing it, and I don't recommend it, but it's actually a good thing to do. There is a module out there, and I saw this during the Contrib, the weekly Contrib by Damien McKenna. He actually showed this off, and it makes a ton of sense. There's a module called IF field or IS field. So if we try to add it to Drupal 9 right now, so composer require Drupal/IS field. What's going to happen is it's not ready for prime time on Drupal 9, and composer says, well, no, you can't do that because it's not ready for Drupal 9. Now there is an issue that actually Damien had created, making it for Drupal 9, and he actually has a merge request with a plain diff and everything on there. And if you take a look at the plain diff, basically what it does is it adds the composer JSON file and everything's honky-dory. So hey, but we can't even get it to add. You'll notice that when you get an error, it actually fires back and says, no, I'm not changing anything. So there's no possible way that we can even add this module because it doesn't have composer JSON and it's not ready for Drupal 9. There's no way for us to add this module to there. Except there is. What you can actually do is up here in the repository section, there's two things that you can do. First, we have this fork here, right? And this fork actually has a Drupal 9 readiest branch that's ready to rock, and that it actually will work for us. However, we need to get that in Composer. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to actually add a new repository, and the type is git, and the URL is, and I'm copying and pasting because that's easier for me to do. Right? So this actually will add that into, or lets our composer know that, hey, there is an IS field git that we want to use. But one other thing that we want to do is we want to make sure in this Drupal 8 one that we exclude, and this takes an array of different things, but the one we want to exclude, the library we want to exclude is Drupal/IS field. Otherwise, this one will take precedence and say, okay, well, you want Drupal is field, we're going to take it out of there. Well, we're excluding it. and then we're using this. Now, the second thing that we want to do is we want to do, we can add in the require section, we end up adding, where's my require section? Back here, there we go. Why did it not? Oh, I hate smart quotes. Whoever came up with smart quotes wasn't very smart. This is actually saying, at this point, we're saying, okay, get us is field, is field, because it actually is not checking for that. And get it off of this branch, which is kind of like saying get it off of a certain version. So just to do a quick primer on what the require is. So this is saying get the vendor is Drupal, the package is Smart Trim, and we want a version that is 1.3 or better. Now 1.3 is the latest one, but if I were to do a release of 1.4, you wouldn't have to actually update this because of this little caret here at the top that says, okay, I'll take any one, or I definitely want it to be the version 1, the main version 1, but we can do subversion 3 or better, is basically what that caret means. So, but this one says Drupal is field, and then the branch that you want. You can actually take this, and instead of doing it this way, hold on, let me copy that again. We can actually do that on the command line by doing composer require Drupal /is field, and then you colon, and then the branch, and then you hit install, and now that fails. Invalid version string. Well, that's what I have from Damien's notes, so let me actually try this way. Nope. Okay. I need to double check this actually. There is a way, I actually watched him do it, but basically the long and the short of it is you want to call this package at this URL and you want this branch to work. So in theory, that's going to give you the ability. Now, why don't we want to do this other than the utter failure that I'm showing you of it not working? The problem is now if when the IS field gets updated, you're gonna not get that updated version. When they actually release the version that's compatible with Drupal 8 and Drupal 9, you'll never know because you're not going to get notifications that it is out of date. There's this great command in Composer, Composer outdated direct, and it will, and none of these should be outdated because I just downloaded them. They're the latest version, so you're not going to get anything on there. But if you have another project that you're working on, you can actually see which modules are out of date, which modules need updated, without having to go to the update page in your Drupal instance. And that way you know what's being updated. However, if you use this approach, you'll never know because this won't ever get updated after it's merged in. One thing that I do need to verify and needs to be verified is after a merge request is merged in, what happens? Does the merge request go away? For instance, in our working, we use GitHub at work, and when we do a Git pull request, that creates a multi-dev view on Pantheon if we're using Pantheon, of course. But once we merge that in, and actually it does the same thing for platform as well. But once we merge that merge request in, it goes away because that branch goes away because that everything else goes away and it just becomes part of the main one. So I do want to validate whether or not the merge request is there forever. Because in the current version, if you add a patch here, and it's actually added to your, say when I include this patch to the smart trim module, it actually will just say can't apply patch and move on with its life. But if it can't find the URL of this patch, we might be having an issue. So that's something that I need to verify and something I didn't get a chance to do before this talk. So yeah, again, short story long, don't do this, but if you need to, it's possible. Unfortunately, the way that I showed is not very working at all. All right, so that's pretty much it for me. Any other questions or ridicule or comments or questions? Feel free to mute yourself or unmute yourself and let me know.
I have a question.
Sure. Here, Anna, good to see you.
Hi, good to see you. First of all, thank you very much. This is a great presentation. Totally cool. My question is not very well formulated. So my understanding is if there's one person who created the fork from a particular patch, let me start it over. So let's say there's one person who created fork from a particular patch, right? Then anyone else who wants to use or test can download it with a patch right away. Is it right?
Yes, when you create, well, no, you create the fork and then you create the merge request, which is now can be tested. So you create the fork, do all your work, commit it, push it up to your you push it up to the fork, and then you create a merge request against the main repo, which is the actual modules repo. If you look at
well, my question is before you create the actual merge request. So we have this step-by-step process, right? Like somebody writes a patch, right? Mm-hmm. And then everyone who wants to test the patch needs to apply it on their local instance or upload to any remote instance that they're using for testing, right?
Uh-huh.
My understanding, I might be completely wrong, that if someone created this issue fork, so if you click on issue fork smart trim here, if you click on it, mm-hmm. If I'm pulling from here, I don't need to apply the patch because patch has been already applied.
No.
Is that correct or not?
That is not correct. When you create a patch, when you create a fork, you are creating an instance of that. That's what I kind of did here. Now this isn't in a Drupal instance. This is actually just in, my home directory. I created the smart trim, I checked out the repo. I checked out the forked repo. And then I created a new branch called ARIA label. And then I did all my work on there and then I pushed it up. And then that way this branch here, ARIA label, is the branch that we are, now this branch has the changes that has the patches. So if you were going to, let me do this.
I think it opens a lot of options for to decrease the amount of work that people need to do to test the patch. Let's say someone created a wonderful patch for, let's say, feeds module. Imagine someone is testing compatibility of feeds module for 8 and 9, and something is not working. And then this person wrote a patch and then he created an issue. He applied the patch on his local instance and pushed it up to the GitLab. Does it mean that this fork will have his patch or no?
If he pushed it, it will, but he also needs to, you need to make sure that you use the correct branch. Now, that being said, you could do all your development on the main branch and then do a a merge request. Once there's a difference in the main branch, you could do a merge request to that. And then that could be the actual main branch. But I always recommend, if you're doing development, to feature off your branch, because that way you know what you're doing. Let's see. Oh, I have a web folder. So
Okay.
modules. There's contrib, cd contrib. Oh, smart trims already. Well, we can remove, because this is just a playground. So git clone that. Oh, and then moves. Oh, mv smart trim that. So we're just going to call it smart trim because that's what you want to call it. So really, that command here, we wanted to add the smart trim to name it. But anyway, and then as I'm doing development, if I cd into smart trim, you notice here I'm on my 8.1.x branch. I could actually put this in the editor, info.yaml, smart trim test, right? And then here I can do a git commit -am. Do not commit this dummy. It's my module, I can say it. And then git push. And now if we go to this repo, to the 8.1.x, there's my commit there, and you can actually take a look at the info.yaml. And now if you were to pull down this repo, this branch would be the one that we're working on.
Right.
Yes. So, but again, I recommend using the different branches when you're pulling in work.
Okay,
That help?
it's kind of, I think this is like, first of all, this is a very new thing and it requires a lot of, finger practice, like to make it quick. But I think that, I hope that this workflow will allow people to test things easier.
Yes. And that's what Amy June was asking about, not doing something local, but using
Right.
the Redditor thing. But again,
Right.
I haven't really used Redditor in a long time, so I haven't played around with it. I find it easier to just fire up my local. But that's how I work, and that's how she works, and that's perfect. As long as we get to moving it forward.
Yes, I think I'm with Amy June because there's lots of people who would love to help with testing, but because applying patch requires setup and not everyone has the setup, like site builders who know what they're testing for might be happy to test the patch, but because they don't have their local instance set up, they don't have ability to test patches. So hopefully that will help to move at least UI patches move forward more efficiently.
Yep, I agree with that 100%.
Great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And you were talking about how your question wasn't well organized. I was thinking that's how my talk is. So thank you. Any other questions?
Thanks. That was really informative. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I think the best part was the bio picture that you had there that had the Green Monster Fenway Park t-shirt coming from Boston. I was very impressed.
The interesting thing about that shirt is I actually got that at Fenway Park.
Nice.
And, oh, well, why don't I just use this to go to slide 2. You can't even read the green. That shirt has faded so much in the 5 years that I've owned it that you can't even read I put that shirt on backwards all the time because I can't tell which side is the front because you can't read it anymore, which is very annoying because I really like it. It's very comfy. But anyway, I did get that at Fenway Park. I was actually out for a decoupled thing with Acquia way back a couple years ago. I want to say it's about 6 years ago. But that was a good time. And I got to go stand on the Green Monster, which, you know, anybody that knows, anytime we go to a conference or anything, if there's a sports ball event, I'm going to go to it. And just so I can say I went to that park. So
Great. Thank you. Great talk.
Thanks.
While we're talking about this slide and giving ridicule.
Yes.
I don't know what's more professional, like at Drunken Drupal or at Team Poop.
Yeah. So actually, I do want to point out something, and both Amy June and Donna proofed this slide, and neither one of them pointed out, until I pointed out, at least to Donna, that the last line of my bio says, "Convinced that nobody reads these bios."
Oh, no, I read it, but that's true because of your Florida camp bio. No one besides me even questioned. I asked Mark to update his Drupal camp Florida bio last year, and it was he updated it and he put his new title or whatever it was at the time of the company he worked for. But then his actual bio said, Amy June asked me to update this. So
still there this year. So yeah, it's easy to do. Yeah, I don't know. Team Poop is my other Twitter handle. I've had that one for a long time, but I like Drunken Drupal because I don't know. It seems more Drupal-y, I guess. Speaking of which, it's time for whiskey. I think.
on that note, I'm going to hit stop recording.